Hey friends, welcome back to the Prometheus Path video podcast. Today we're going to dive in deep into values. But before we jump into the values, I want to just talk about a few things, a few updates going on that are relevant to values. But it's been busy around here because we are currently living at my in-laws' house while they are in Iceland doing some volunteer work for a few years. They're coming home in a few months, and so we're going to move out. But while we've been here, we've been in the process of selling our house, and we're going to be buying a new house. So we'll talk about that. But life has been busy and lots going on for that. So it's kind of why, this has been a little bit slow going, but I hope to be consistent in posting videos, and you can subscribe and hopefully pay attention to what we're sharing here, because it really will change the way that you live a life. It'll bring more meaning and fulfillment to your life and more joy. So let's jump into it. So values. When I talk about values, it's really all about living a life that's true to you. Living there's this phrase that you hear a lot, living authentically, living, to your authentic self. And really a lot of what that comes down to is your values. Why does knowing your values really matter? Well, I like to think of it this way. It's kind of like your internal compass. Knowing your values is like knowing where you're supposed to be pointed all the time. Without knowing your values, you don't really know where you're supposed to go. When you have a compass, it points north, right? And so based on north, you can pick a bearing. You can say, I want to head a bearing of 270 degrees and go that way. In life, your values are the same. You can say, I want to head towards my specific value. For me, my two core values are growth and unity. So everything that I do, I'm headed towards growth and or unity. And the various subservient values that come under those. But those are the two big ones, growth and unity. So it's just kind of like that. Like you pick your values, you live to them, and you know how to make decisions based on those values. Researchers call this value congruent living. And they actually did a study in 2019. Journal of Positive Psychology found that people who reflect on their values regularly, who have them well defined and then reflect on them, they not only feel happier, but they also experience less stress in life, more clarity, and better ability to make decisions. So if that's something you want, let's jump into it and figure out how to do this better. So really the fundamentals are, how do you identify your values? And the core of it, this is the hardest part, right? It isn't something you can just figure out by plugging it into AI or Googling or scrolling on TikTok or Facebook or whatever. It really does take some introspective work. But here's a system I like to use that really helps break it down. The first part of this is get out a journal. And this is where I said, get some note paper. And this could be a long-term thing. You're going to need to reflect on this again and again, especially in moments where you're feeling connected to your past self or your history. You're reflecting on who you are and where you come from and all those things. But you're going to want to look back at your life and think about peak moments. When have you felt like you're truly alive? When you're at peace with the world, when everything's going well, you're in a flow state, when you're just like happy to be who you are. Think about those moments, write them down. And then after you get a good list of those, think through each one of them and think about what values were present. What values were you living into in those moments? And think about like why those values were important to you. And yeah, you can pull up you can just Google like list of values and pull up, there's like lists of hundreds of values to give you ideas of what you're looking for, but try to identify those primary values. So for me, I'm thinking back about my childhood and certain moments where I really just felt like, oh, this is perfect. This is who I want to be forever. And pretty much every single one of those moments, I can relate somehow back to some feelings of personal growth, growth in my life, stretching myself, accomplishing challenging goals, pushing myself beyond my limits, and those are all growth related, right? And then the other one is unity. And unity relates more to like connecting with other people, connecting with my own self, my own identity, connecting with nature, being unified with my family and my friends. So growth and unity really are the common denominators in all of my peak moments. Think about yours for a while, take a week or two and figure it out. Then what I want you to do, next step, is to notice your frustrations. What makes you angry or upset? What makes you to feel just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be in this situation. Those are situations typically where you're bumping up against your values. And what I mean by that is your values, so mine, growth and unity, if I'm not being able to live into growth or unity, then I'm going to feel frustrated. I'm going to feel like I'm not being able to live true to myself. And so those values become indicators. When I feel that frustration, look for that presence or absence, in this case of the value, and find how you can insert that or modify the situation to live to those values. But right now, we're not talking about living the values. We're really just talking about how do you identify those values. So if you find some frustration periods in your life, look for what's missing. And it's typically your primary values. Okay, once you've got this all written down, whatever they are, freedom, creativity, love, honesty, adventure, whatever really resonates with you, start to narrow this list down. And you may have, start out with like 10 or 15 values that make sense. But now you need to really, this is the part that most of, like, if you search this up on the website somewhere, you're not going to find the details of how to do this. Narrow it down to your top 1 or 2 core values only. These are your non-negotiable values. These are your core primary values, things that you will fight for and hold dear to you, even when it's inconvenient or hard or challenging. These are the things that you live and breathe by. And oftentimes what you find is you're going to have a hard time making this list, right? You're going to struggle to come up with those top 2 because you've got these other 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or whatever that, like, I really like these ones too. Oftentimes what I find when I work through this with people is those are your sub-values. Those are values that plug into the primary values. Those subordinate values reflect a small core piece of the primary value. So for me, for example, adventure is one of my values, but it's not my core value. Adventure is really important to me. And I love, doing all the things, mountain biking, rock climbing, skiing, going on adventures like that. And for a while, I thought that's one of my values, but then I recognized, no, it's not. But what I'm getting out of the adventure is part of it, because the core value is growth. And one of the ways I love to challenge myself is getting out in nature. So those two kind of play hand in hand, and the unity piece comes along in that too, in some regards. But enough about me. Let's keep going down this list. So once you figured out what those core values are and kind of plugged in the puzzle what your subordinate values are, then you can keep working through this puzzle, right? And it really is a puzzle. It's going to take a long time to work through this all, a lot of reflection and introspection. All right. So the benefits of aligning with your values, really, this is huge. This is where all the work to figure this out pays off. What happens when you start living aligned with your values? It's really like magic. Okay. Literally, like it's magic. It changes a lot of things. When you live true to your values, you become better at making decisions. That's the most important one. So let's talk about the house situation with my wife and I. We're looking at all these houses, right? And there's choices of what's available, what's on the market. And some of them are pretty cool. Some of them are fancy. They've got these nice features, big bedrooms and really well done bathrooms, and the kitchens are just like perfect. Or maybe they're like in a desirable location, neighborhood, things, all this that everyone looks at when they're buying a house. But what we found and what we kept coming into is like we were conflicting. We kept running into each other like, well, I don't like that house because of this cost or this location. And it was really hard to come to a consensus on which houses we liked until we started approaching it based on our values. And we got really clear and communicated our values to each other in this situation, our core values first, and then those subordinate values that were playing a role in this decision-making process. And once we were able to communicate our values to each other, we could see each other and we could understand why each house stood out as better than the others for each other. And we talked to our kids about it too and used their values as part of this process. And their values aren't as defined because they're still young and don't quite understand who they are, but that's still part of the puzzle. So we looked at all these values and put them together. And then with this combined group of values, my wife's and mine, we're able to look at houses and find the one that most conformed to those values. There are compromises always, but which few houses fit the values that we have as a group. And it was a lot easier. It was so much easier. We came up with our list of, 4 or 5 houses. And now we've narrowed it down to 1 as we've been touring, and we're in the process of trying to make offers. So hopefully that will come out supporting all of our values as we work through it. Okay. Also, along with decision making, the values help us reduce stress. And the reason that happens is because part of it is because we can make better decisions. We feel like we're more in control of our lives. We don't have to be thrown about this way and that by every decision that comes our way. What are my friends going to think? Who's going to be paying attention or criticizing me? It's really about you. And that's where the authenticity comes in. Like you're living your life and you know why and how, and you're not subconsciously being influenced by social media or someone else. You're able to look at your values, and I have mine posted so I can see them every day. And I just look at them and say, okay, this decision for me, what does this look like? Right? It's really easy when you know and you have a definition for your value. My definition of growth looks very different than somebody else's. So I have a very personal definition of it. And when I apply it, decisions become easy and I can live authentically to who I am. And I don't have to worry about what other people think. Obviously, I'm trying to pay attention to how my decisions impact other people. And that's a different video. But for now, it's how does this decision play into my values? So when we can really live true to our values, we don't have to do it perfectly, but we have to do it intentionally. We have to do it thoughtfully. Think about it every day. Who am I, and is this the life I want to build? Start small. Reflect on your values daily. Put them up on your mirror in your bathroom. Make a decision today to define them and then live aligned with them. And over time, as you practice this, it will become more of a habit and you'll understand them more deeply and meaningfully and be able to make those values who you are. And when you do that, life just unfolds. It's beautiful. And it really helps to step into some of the next pieces that we'll talk about in trying to live a meaningful and fulfilled life. So hopefully this was of value to you. See what I did there? But really jump in and find those values. If you have questions or you've tried to do this before and you've struggled to make it stick, reach out. I'd love to chat and help you work through finding and defining your values. And let me know in the comments if you found your values, if you know what they are and you live by them and you've had experiences. Share in the comments what that looks like for you and if it's been helpful. And also, if you want to continue learning more about these things, like and subscribe, and we'll keep going in the future.